If I can get your attention for the last beautiful moment of this event.
While they were downstairs, he wanted to clear the room. And didn't have any questions.
We're going to start up again.
Oh, good.
Yeah, and it somehow seems fitting to me that we finish off this two-day celebration of the Ambrosiana with a person who also needs no introduction in this room. I will simply mention that when I came here 8.5 years ago, one of the delightful things I found was Randy Coleman in an office back here, a man of wonderful good cheer and good humor and a great presence here. And over the years since then, I've come to realize how enormous his labors have been on behalf of the Ambrosiana collection of drawings and on behalf of the partnership between the Ambrosiana and Notre Dame. And so to conclude our events with a few reflections with some images, I give you Dr. Robert Randolph Coleman.
So as you can see, and I'm happy that Lou was able to give us such a brief history because there's a lot of stuff going on there and a few secrets that didn't want to be divulged. So I'm offering a kind of a sort of a biograph. It ends up being slightly autobiographical, which is a little alarming when one has to look at one's face over the course of 40 years and the changes that have occurred went from dreadlocks to this. So, it's all been quite an interesting experience. And I must say that the support that I've had for this project has been extraordinary. It's come from a lot of different directions. I'll just say first off, before I started talking about the drawings, is that there were scholars before me that had dabbled and had tried to put things together. Pietro Nurki, who you mentioned, was a librarian at the Biblioteca. He wasn't an art historian, but he put together an inventory, and it was really the first sort of solid inventory of the collection because it just didn't exist. Back in the mid-'60s, Gilda Rosa, an art historian who did a lot of interesting things, I came across an article of hers about porcelains. She did all sorts of. I was able to use some of her notes to formulate and get a head start on what I was doing. And then there was another scholar, Antonio Falchetti, who did a series of studies on some of the drawings. And then when I got to Milan and was working on the exhibition that Lou mentioned, I got to meet Giulio Bora. I think I had met Giulio beforehand. And he really is the foremost scholar of Lombard art history. And people come to him and sit at his feet. That's the kind of guy. Lovely man, retired now from the Statale. So I just wanted to just bring that to your attention that there's a lot that, and I'm very, very proud of the fact that I've been able to be a person connected to this long-standing tradition of inventorying, cataloging, and appreciating these works of art. And I feel that it was a great, for a boy from the Bronx, it was a great gift to be able to be part of this ancient tradition. So I'll just begin very quickly. I don't know how often you've seen any of these images before. This is the old entranceway to the Ambrosiana, the facade by Ricchini and Buzzi. I think it was 1609 when the library was founded in the Church of San Sepolcro. One day when my eyes were falling out of my face, I decided to go upstairs and look around, and I said, I'm going to take some pictures of the reading room just for fun. And so I found these among my slides, and I thought it'd be interesting. It was very interesting for me to work there at the very beginning because I wasn't really given permission to do all the kinds of things I needed to do. Won't go into the details of that, but it was just the way things were structured. And so one of the gentlemen who had to bring me materials had to do so by putting together. I was working sort of chronologically and numerically with the drawings, and I didn't know that in the back, in the Sala Ceriani, that there were albums and then there were drawings that were taken out of the albums and put in mats and frames. So this poor gentleman had to go back and forth and back. So every time he brought me a cart, he had a look on his face like, I hate you. Because it was a lot of work, and I had no idea. Anyway, I thought that was interesting. This is, of course, staged. And I wanted to, this was the only drawing I wanted to show you because these are the drawings, these are the 17th century academic drawings. And I have to say, from the onset, clearly I'm not a medievalist, so the only non-medievalist up here. And I discovered some of these wonderful drawings, red chalk drawings that have been put into these albums. All of them used to be in albums at one point or other, eventually were taken out. So that gives you a sense. And this is the room that I was able to eventually work in on a regular basis. Lou mentioned our exhibit, and this was a really, for me, a very scary moment. I had not finished my dissertation at the University of Chicago, and Ralph said, "Oh, we're going to have an exhibition. You're running the catalog." I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he said, "Oh, we have Dürer drawings and Raphael." I'm thinking, "Oh my God, I have to do the Raphael literature. I have to go into." It really was overwhelming. But we did it. We pulled it off, and we did everything in house. One of the designer of our catalog was a young woman who was in the design department of Notre Dame. She came up with this idea for the cover. It's a Giulio Romano drawing, which I think was absolutely perfect. It's a wonderful design option. I won't go into the details of that. But I wanted to show you just a couple of things from this exhibition because it's now been a long time. And some of these drawings have been around and moved around quite a bit. And I've chosen a few weird, interesting objects. This is by Pisanello, one of the major figures out of Verona. He was, in some ways, his works were contained in these taccuini, these sketchbooks that were used as model books, so that you find, for example, in the drawing on the right, you have all these men dressed in contemporary costumes, some of them fanciful, some of them not. And these were used to be inserted in a number of works of art. The same is true for the battle scene. He did a great battle scene in the church San Anastasio in Verona. I think that's where this is. That I think he selected some of these ideas. So this was used in the workshop. This was used by the master. This was a way to remember things and to be able to help create certain larger works of art. And that's what drawings are all about, basically, until we get into the 16th century where they become more understood as independent works of art. There were some discoveries that were made. I'm very proud to say I made this one. And it was absolutely, art history requires looking, and I did a lot of looking. And all of a sudden I discovered that this drawing by Bramantino, who was a really fantastic artist and an architect as well, working in Milan, and he took the name of Bramante, this association with Bramante, the great architect from Florence. And this was a drawing of two apostles. It had always been attributed to him on basis of style. And then I discovered, sadly, it's a very, very badly damaged altarpiece of a Pentecost. And those two figures are actually the figures that you see that are squared off in red in the background. And this was and I have to say, this drawing had been studied by scholars for almost 75 years, and nobody had associated it with the painting. So I was very, very pleased with myself. This is a very famous drawing. You may have seen this around. I don't know. We used to have our poster here. It's in the back, I guess, by Boltraffio, who was one of the followers of Leonardo da Vinci. It's a beautiful colored chalk drawing that was of a woman as a model. She became a useful subject for the painting of his Saint Barbara, a painting that's in Berlin in 1502. And this is one of the most glorious drawings in the entire collection. So these were some of the Lombard drawings in the collection. We also had, and I'm sorry to say, don't have all of these in color, but other artists who, Pellegrino Tebaldi was an artist that moved around quite a bit, very much inspired by Michelangelo. And he designed, there were drawings that he made for the walnut choir stalls in the cathedral. And I just show you a detail of one just to show you that it's in walnut wood. It's not one of the subjects that I have in the drawings, but I wanted to give you an idea of what his drawings, how they worked. And in fact, this whole cycle is dedicated to St. Ambrose, of course, and that's not surprising. They're funny narratives. We won't go there. There's too much information there. But these were used for models for the wood carver. And then there was this fantastic drawing by Raphael. I'm sorry it's not in color. It's a red chalk drawing. Sometimes it's been attributed to Raphael's pupil. It's designed for those two figures, the man and his son possessed by demons, in the lower right corner of the painting. The Transfiguration is it's one of the greatest paintings ever made, in my estimation. But it's a conflation of two stories. So you have Christ transfigured on the mountain and the apostles up there, and then there's a subsequent scene at the lower portion of the composition where this man brings his son who's possessed to the apostles to be healed. So Raphael has conflated this remarkable comment, so it becomes he stretches the narrative, makes it quite unique. He was a great painter and a great mind. Federico Barocci, who some of you may not know, was one of the most gifted draftsmen of the 16th century, late 16th century. He drew a lot. There are thousands of his drawings still surviving, many of them pastels. And he was one of these individuals who would take drawings and turn them around and ship them and find new places to think about where they could fit in his paintings. And so you see the figure of St. Dominic is actually in reverse in the painting, where he decided, oh, I don't like that idea, I'm going to flip it around. So that's something that Barocci he's become quite popular nowadays. There have been a couple of big exhibitions on Barocci, one which was down in St. Louis, actually a few years ago, a big show. One of the most intriguing characters is Daniele Crespi, who, had he lived, would have been one of the greatest painters in Lombardy and in Milan. He died of the 1630 plague, like hundreds of thousands of individuals did. So he did live to be around 30 years old, but he showed himself to be extraordinary, and in fact he painted a series of frescoes in the Certosa outside of the city, frescoed the ceilings, the wall, I mean it goes on and on. And so we have a compositional design or a modello for that particular painting based on the life of St. Hugh of Grenoble. And then there were Dürer's. I showed you something that you wouldn't expect to see because it's a landscape. And Dürer created this drawing on one of his returns from Italy. Dürer was lucky when he went to Italy. He traveled to Italy at a very auspicious moment because the glaciers had receded significantly enough that he was able to travel down from Nuremberg to get into Italy without much difficulty. Because you can imagine crossing the Alps, and I have no idea what that's like in those days. Anyway, so this is a beautiful a watercolor of his, one of many, of a larch tree, which are trees which are found all over the Alps, in the foothills of the Alps. And then this was mentioned earlier. This was in the exhibit as well. I mean, you can see for a young man who had written his dissertation what all of this it was a lot. it was a lot. Anyway, so we have the beautiful Night, Death, and the Devil. That was there, both recto and verso, for the print, the engraving of 1513. And here we go into some photographs. I just couldn't resist them because they sort of give some of the names that Lou has mentioned. There's Cesare Pazzini in the center. He and I next to Tom Noble back in the day. And then, of course, we have a moment when the late Remy Constable, was visiting Milan. And we had a good time in Milan together with Remy. I mean, she went to the Brera for the first time, and she was thrilled, and she had a great time. In fact, she gave a lecture here about her visit there. This one doesn't seem to move. Here we go. And then we had an event here that took place in the rare book room downstairs. Father Hesburgh was attended. You can see him with Jennifer Younger, then the head of the library, and Remy, and a couple of photographs of our friends from Milan. The gentleman on the Marco Navoni, who is Marco Navoni here and there. I think at that time he was the director of the Pinacoteca.
Yes.
But he's now the prefect of the collection. And I found these photographs of Gundi and Maureen Bolton. Some of you may know these women who are important ladies in the humanities and medieval and classic studies.
Is that Chuck? Chuck Rosenberg behind?
Yeah.
Yes, it is. Yeah, there's another picture of him with Danielle Joyner. Oops, going the wrong way. Needs no more introduction. Whoops. And here we are on different moments. Alberto Rocca came here in 2017. At that time I was the president of the Midwest Art History Society, and we were looking for a speaker to open our sessions. And at that time, Raphael's great cartoon had been restored, so I brought Don Alberto in. He spoke at our conference in Cleveland, and then subsequently came here, spoke at the Snite Museum, and gave a presentation here in the Medieval Institute. Oops, went the wrong way. And this is the moment when he did that. I don't know if this is really worth the hassle, but this was the announcement of his visit that day. Just to give you a sense of and so the story goes, and it's a long one, and Lou has started it, and I'll try to kind of finish it in a respectable manner. This digital project was probably, I think it was probably the first digital project for any museum in the Western world. The Met hadn't done it, the Louvre hadn't done it, no one had done anything what we were doing. Now, we didn't know what we were doing. We really didn't. We went from various,
One thing, when you started that was before Notre Dame had email.
Oh, that's right.
So, imagine,
And I
people
did
did
it
not
on
have computers.
a computer that was gigantic.
Yeah.
And it had a dot matrix printer, and it was in WordPerfect.
Yep.
Which, remember that, for those of you who remember WordPerfect? Yep, well, eventually we had to convert it
With
over.
floppy disks.
With floppy disks, and we went from floppy to semi-floppy, and we went through the whole thing.
5-inch floppies?
Yeah, 5-inch floppy.
Exactly. So I wanted to point this out that, as Lou mentioned already, that the external funding came from the Samuel H. Kress Foundation, Art Historical Foundation, supporting art historical scholarship from either museums or graduate student programs. And then, thanks to Ken Emery, we were able to connect with another foundation, the Skaggs Foundation, which kept this project going. The Press Foundation was frankly a little tired of giving us money. we had their funds for a long time. And Marilyn Perry, who was a great supporter of our project, I remember her telling me one day, she said, "Randy, well, the board really wants us to move on." fortunately, Kent came through, and we were able to connect with the Skaggs Foundation. And certainly the Institute, whenever it could, and the libraries were great supporters. And I wanted to shout out to Rob Fox, for example, in the library, who really, if it weren't for Rob, I couldn't have done half of this. There are problems that only he knows how to solve. And he held our hand through the whole process. And he still is doing so, because we had a moment about a year ago in which, for some unknown reason, our link in the library did not connect with the Ambrosiana's link. And so if you hit the Ambrosiana site, it said image, site not known or something. It was like, oh no, what happened? And I had no idea how long it had been there like that. So Rob fixed it. He did the whole thing for us. He's a great guy. What I didn't do are these things. Thank goodness. There have been many scholars, Carlo Pedretti and others, who have worked on Leonardo drawings, and the Codex Atlanticus, which is, an astonishing collection of Leonardo drawings. I'll give you a little bit of the history there. It went to his pupil Francesco Melzi, and then it ended up being acquired by Pompeo Leone, who put it together in volumes, and then it has its own life. So I never did any of that, which is a blessing. It was too much. And then there is this, the largest drawing in the Renaissance drawing, I was there while it was being restored. It was a moment of almost an epiphany of some kind. To see this drawing laid out horizontally for as long as from here to the end of this room on these giant sheets of paper was, even now I think about it and I become emotional. It's just an extraordinary thing. And this cartoon has been badly damaged. Napoleon stole it, like he did everything else, rolled it up, took it to Paris, and got mildewed and wet, and things happened to it. It's amazing it still has survived. But Maurizio Michelozzi, who was the gentleman in the beige pants, led the group to restore it. And you'll see Alberto Rocca on the second from the right, and then you'll also see Marco Ballarini next to, there he is, who was then the prefect of the Ambrosiana. Lovely man, very sweet man.
So Randy, where was this drawing? Was this in the Vatican Library?
No, it's always been at the Ambrosiana.
Oh,
Yeah, it has a really interesting history. It comes from I think it's Visconti. It was a Visconti.
Complicated history.
Yeah, it's a weird
story.
Weird story. We have a book back there if you want to read it. And what I also didn't work on, what I did work on some things, but I wanted to bring the attention to one of the greatest collectors of drawings ever, was Padre Sebastiano Resta. I couldn't help but throw a picture with me and Giulio. I don't remember the day, the year exactly, but it's early. We're both kind of young, and I don't remember even what lake we went to. I don't know if it was Como. Maybe it was Como. I don't know. And then I found this photograph of Giulio when the Resta Codex was being disassembled. And there's a really interesting story about that, because one of the great scholars of Italian drawings, Carmen Bombach, who's at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, produced books, exhibits on Leonardo, Michelangelo, the works. She's amazing. She saw the Resta Codex one day and thought that it was suffering mildew and something tragic. She was actually wrong. It was a huge scandal, apparently. What it was that there was a kind of a discoloration or an oxidation of certain pigments on the folios. And so it wasn't in as bad shape as she thought it was. But in any event, what did result was the I'm not sure I'm happy about it, but the disassembly of the rest of the codex so that individual sheets can be shown, which is valuable, but I'd like to see that an album still. It's just my other group of rest of drawings are a series of drawings by Rubens. So you see the diversity of this collection so far. It's all over the place. This is the famous Laocoon. There's one or two drawings of a small group known as the Resta Codex II, so-called. And there are 6 drawings there. I think 2 of them are by followers, but this one is actually a bona fide Rubens. And I put the mention of the provenance because when one gets into the nitty-gritty of some of these things, you begin to see the interesting stuff pop up. And now, of course, for those of us who work in manuscripts and drawings and the like, provenance is really fun, if you can figure it out, which has always been the big problem. And apparently there was this unidentified Flemish artist, nobody knows for sure, was the source of the drawings for Padre Resta. I have no idea who Monsieur Abbé is. Well, but that's what I'm told.
Monsieur Abbé, Monsieur l'Abbé.
He was an abbot, yes, but
Which?
And you can see some of the problems with drawings like this because the dates of this particular drawing has varied. Scholars have fussed about it for quite some time. 1601, 16102, 16606, 08. Now, so this is basically, what I'm going to show you now is basically what you see on the site when you go to the database. So you come across, this is I just put that up there. That's a detail of a drawing by, I'm forgetting, Guercino, red chalk drawing, and it's been cut off to fit into the space, obviously. I change that from time to time because I like to have a new look. And then if you scroll down, you'll find out you can access information about the collection from the homepage of the website, which includes, I might add, not only provenance and history of the drawings collection, more or less, but a bibliography of all the works cited in this collection. And there are, we initially thought there were 12,000 drawings. Then we realized that was way too many. We dropped it down to 10,000 drawings. And I have cataloged 8,300 and something drawings now. And it's only in one grouping called the F inferior. So the things like the graphic cartoon and there are other drawings scattered around, but that wasn't my responsibility. So for all those drawings that we have a bibliography. And you'll actually, I must say, you won't find this in any other museum catalog. You don't get bibliography, generally speaking. Occasionally somebody works on something and they stick it in there. So, you know, let me see what else I have. It goes down here. And these are all Raphael. I forgot I had the red chalk drawing of that. Oh, there we go. And the Raphael. Giuseppe Bizon on the far right, an important Lombard Milanese painter, and Annibale Carracci in the center. Nice, good stuff. Another Guercino, and the Cignaroli, which I'll talk about momentarily. Where's my cursor? This is a highly disputable issue because we have an inventory that claims that a certain number on the order of 4,320, I think is the right number, drawings came from this one collection of Federico Fagnani. Nobody really knows exactly if that's true because it says drawings and objects, and so we, how many of each we don't know. And the drawings, as in many inventories, if you look at ancient inventories, and some of you have done this with manuscripts, I'm sure, the information is pretty brief. It may just give the title, number one, Jephthah. Well, that's not helpful. And Fagnani is kind of like that. It actually is none of that at all. So I just thought I'd show you. He did give quite a bit to the collection, an important group of it in the 19th century. And these are just two portraits, one posthumous, I think done not long after he gave his will, gave it to the museum. I wanted to show you something about what it looks like when you access a drawing. I lost the mouse, there it is. So this is what I call the back door. Uh-oh, do I have to do this? Oh dear. Oh dear. Do I have
Only
to?
the hackers can get in.
I forgot, I'm at home. I think that's right.
I hope it's right.
Hope it's right. No, they didn't want it. I'm not going to go dig for it. It's too much to go into that. I don't know why they wanted that.
It's the password now. Yeah.
Huh?
That was the next
I don't know why I wanted the password now. All right, this is the front door. The back door is my skeletal workspace. So when you access a drawing, this is what you'll find. And you can zoom in a little bit. They're low resolution. And I have to say, I forgot to mention this at the onset, these are not taken, well, only very few are taken from the originals. So we're talking about at a remove from the original work of art. So the black and white photographs that we have in 715G were the sources for these images. And they're only, the images that have been scanned are only as good as the photography. They're just a black and white glossy photography on pages. So that's what we had to work with. And then you'll scroll down and you'll see that we have a catalog number that I arbitrary from our angle, the inventory shelf mark, the artist, the title, the media and information about the sheet of paper, dimensions, provenance. This, interestingly enough, was given to the museum of the Pinacoteca by Luca Beltrami, remarkable individual who I think I'm correct in saying that he was the architect of the Vatican museums. I believe so, something like that. Great connoisseur, polymath. The description of the drawing, and the reason we do that because we want to be able to have everything searchable. So I try to write a description that would allow for anyone looking for whatever they're looking for. If you want a violin made in the 16th century, and if we have drawings of those, you'll find it. If you want, look at drawings of skeletons and so forth and so on. So all those kind of keywords, in addition to the fact that there are keywords at the bottom. And then there's the reason for the attribution. And there's some example of the bibliography. This is a true, many drawings have never been published. I don't know what the percentage is that were not published, but some of them are quite extensive, as you can see from this. And then we have subject keys and keywords. And I updated it for some unknown reason not too long ago. I don't know why. I did something.
Randy, did you say that there were many drawings for the frescoes of the Certosa in the collection, or just a few?
There are, I think only 3. But he painted the vault. There are a number of, he painted a lot for which we don't have drawings. I think that.
But he would have made drawings.
Oh yes, absolutely. And in fact, more often than not, one of the great things is, of course, that drawings can tell us about what wasn't done, which has always been fun. Again, to show you something about the diversity of the collection, here's a side elevation of the library, the Ambrosiana Library by Vicchini, who was responsible, Federico Borromeo was responsible for hiring him, basically, to do work on the original part of the building. And then there's a facade of a church of San Fedele, one of the most important and beautiful Mannerist constructions in Milan by Tibaldi and Bassi. again, I just want to give you a sense of the variety, because I learned a lot of things. There are even drawings for things like this. A bunch of these things, and I find it fascinating, and I don't know if many people know that we have a large number of these designs for tabernacles in Milan. Lots of them. I mean, I don't know how many, but lots. And I think it ties into Carlo Borromeo's desire to change the view, as he did for so many things, when he was concerned about reform. The way the churches were the central aisles were open, nothing got in the way. But here he wanted the tabernacle not on the wall, but on the altar. And so you have all these counter-reformatory designs for tabernacles. Lots of them. There was a moment when I thought, if I see one more tabernacle, I'm going to scream. But they're really fascinating stuff. And then in the 19th century, we have some interesting things too. Tito Vespasiano Paravicini was an interesting fellow who did, I don't know too much about him, but I do know that he came from a wealthy family. This is a view of his family villa. And one of his designs for a tomb in the Egyptian style, those of you who have never been to Milan, if you go, you've got to go to the Monumental Cemetery. It's one of the most amazing places. You've got obelisks and pyramids, and I love it. It's great stuff. And I think this may have been a design for something there.
Randy?
Yes.
Yeah, our television crew is running out of time.
I'm an art historian. I have the gift for gab. I'll get it over with.
So we just have a couple of minutes.
Okay.
So sorry about that.
I knew this was going to happen. Again, other drawings by diverse characters. And these, I had moments of losing my mind, because Francesco Londonio was really an important Milanese painter, but he painted sheep and goats and contadini, and they would go on and on and on. I think we have like about 200 of his drawings. And if I look at another goat, but when he did them nicely, he did them beautifully, as you see on the drawing on the right. I won't go into detail about this, but I discovered this drawing. Someone had published it years ago. I didn't know, but I found out about it. And it's a table clock. And I was able to correspond with somebody in Germany. I discovered this drawing by Charles Melin, a red chalk drawing that's related to a painting that he did. You can see what I say about that there. Red chalk drawing, very interesting. And then I discovered work that had already been published, but then produced a volume on the drawings of Cineroli. And Cineroli was an artist from Verona, 18th century painter. I highlighted, I missed it a little bit, but those three brown, those are the albums that he did. He collected his own drawings, put dates on them, said where they were, what churches they were in. It was his Liber Veritatis. He wanted everyone to know where this is mine, and I did this. So I produced a critical analysis of these drawings by Cineroli. And I think, as all things in the end, I won't go through this. In the end, this is one of the reasons why we just do one thing. There's a beautiful drawing in it for the painting in the Duomo at Pisa, and the arrow points to where it is on the side aisle, which Cineroli did in 1766. And the Ambrosiana drawing is here, and this is a Detroit drawing, a Modello in Pisa, and the final work. So it got really quite complicated. I discovered this. This came up for sale at auction. It was attributed to somebody else, but it really is Cineroli, and it's in his album. And this was the final high point. After all is said and done, I was given the opportunity and very happy to accept an induction into the Accademia Ambrosiana. It was a great honor for me. That's my sister there, Alberto Rocca, Monsignor Buzzi, and then of course, I could have cropped this, but I like the height of the sculpture there. And at the top here, the other members of the other individuals who were inducted that very same evening. That's it. Fine.
Thank you for that beautiful walk through a career, an illustrious career, working with all of these magnificent drawings.